I know a lot of you players out there got very excited when you saw Shenhe's art. She looks so cool. She's got a very powerful buff, but not everything's going to be positive about the states of this character. We're going to be talking about Shenhe today, obviously, and she's going to be sort of what we've been seeing lately from a lot of these sort of element-based supports, right? Yujin's coming out supporting Geo. We have good old Goro coming out supporting Geo. We had Cryo supporting good old Electro, and now it's Cryo's turn with Shenhe, and most of her stuff is going to be in a few of her talents. Now, the thing that sets her apart from everything else is going to be her elemental skill, Spring Spirit Summoning. Now, Spring Spirit Summoning is going to have two different forms, a press version and a hold version, okay? Now, you're going to be summoning a Spirit Talisman, and it's going to apply a buff to your party. Now, this is going to play a very powerful buff, but it does have a downside. So let's talk about the powerful part of this. At talent level 10, whenever the active character does a plunging attack, a normal attack, a charge attack, an elemental skill, or an elemental burst, if they do cryo damage to opponents, it's going to get a damage bonus increase based on Shenhe's current attack. And this is called the Icy Quill buff. Now, the Icy Quill buff here has two ways to wear off. It's going to last for a certain amount of seconds, 10 seconds on the press, 15 seconds on the hold. All this sounds very good. And at level 10, 76.49% of her attack is what it's based off of. Now, the downside here is that the press version, this can only activate 5 times. You get 5 stacks of this buff, which means if you do 5 instances of cryo damage, whether it's a normal charged, plunging attack because you're using it with Chongyun, or maybe you have elemental skills, elemental bursts out there, Ganyu, charge attack, a Yaka elemental burst, this is going to be able to be applied 5 times. If you have the hold version, it's going to be 7 instances that you can do this. Now, the press cooldown is 10 seconds, and the hold cooldown is 15 seconds. So you're gonna get 2 extra charges, and that's wild. That's gonna be 50% increase on the cooldown for 2 extra instances of damage there, which 50% increases of damage would be 2.5 stacks, but they rounded down instead of up. Go figure, if we had something like the sacrificial polearm, right, this would be awesome for this character, but we don't. So let's talk about some other stuff for this character. The other thing that she does do is she does indeed have an elemental burst, the Divine Maiden's Deliverance. And I'm not gonna lie to you, this one seems pretty subpar so far here. So talent level 10, once again, you activate it, the damage multiplier is 181% cryo damage. On top of that, it's going to have a duration of 12 seconds, and it's going to pulse periodically for damage, and the damage multiplier for this is 59.62% damage. This is terrible damage multiplier, so this better have an extremely cheap cost, a long duration, and a very nice buff associated with it. What's the buff, you may ask? Well, it's going to reduce cryo resist and physical resist by 15% at talent level 10. If you don't have it maxed out, it's going to be lower, 6%, 8%, 10%, 15% at talent level 10 is where you want to take this thing. And honestly, this also is going to have 2 other downsides. 20-second cooldown on a 12-second duration, and it costs 80 energy. Let me reiterate that to you. It's going to cost 80 energy to do this. 15% resist down. Now, resist downs are awesome in the game, but we already have other non-focused characters that do resist downs on their skills. We're looking at someone like Zhongli, someone that's an animal character. We're in the Viridescent Venver set. They're not on a 80 cost elemental burst. I don't think this elemental burst is all that cracked up. Now, the real power is in her E, but that also has the downside. You're going to bring this character just for the E, very high cost, energy cost on this elemental burst for a little bit of damage, very minuscule amount of damage, and then a very minor buff to enemies that were within her AoE on Divine Maiden's Deliverance. But hopefully the Ascensions and maybe even some of the Constellations can save this character and make her everything that she needs to be. So the first Ascension here is going to be Deific Embrace here, and the active character within her elemental burst, Divine Maiden's Deliverance, is going to get 10% cryo damage increase. And honestly, this is 2021, almost 2022, and this is a very niche support character. and this is 10% cryo damage increase. I think Aloy actually gives a little bit better support to more things in your party. 10% damage bonus is cool, but remember, this is additive with everything else. It's additive with your damage bonus up from like your cryo goblet and everything else that your character may have access to. You're supporting Gani. She's got cryo damage bonus out the wazoo. 10% more addition to that. It's not going to be 10% additional damage. It'll be like 2-3%, maybe at most, bonus damage at the end of the day. So this second Ascension is a little bit more interesting here. This is going to be the Spirit Communion Seal. It's going to have two different effects. It's going to be based on whether you use the press or the hold version of your elemental skill. If you use the press version, then all of your party members are going to get 15% increased elemental skill and elemental burst damage. Now this is pretty cool because it's not locked to cryo damage. In one of the uses of Raiden Shogun with characters like Eula or other characters out there, Beidou as well, she does give a pretty significant elemental damage bonus to elemental bursts in your team composition from Raiden Shogun's E. And this is going to give you 15% elemental burst damage in skill damage at the same time for everyone in your party, which is pretty nice. But also, just like Raiden Shogun, it's not the sole reason that she should be in your party, for the same reason that Raiden Shogun's sole reason to be your party isn't just to give 15 to 20% elemental damage bonus on your elemental bursts for characters around you. Now, the other thing here is the hold version is going to increase your normal charge and plunging attack damage by 15% for 15 seconds. So that's going to help you out a little bit as well. So if you happen to be like a cryo character that's doing charged attacks, plunging attacks, or normal attacks, you're going to use your hold. You're going to get 10% cryo damage and 15% normal charging and plunging attack damage, or 10% cryo and then 15% elemental skill and elemental burst damage. You're gonna have that 5 to 7 additional damage bonuses from her E as well applied to your character. So this is really what she's about. She doesn't do on-field damage. This is her whole base kit. A little bit extra damage, 5 to 7 charges, and then 10 to 25% bonus damage from her 2 Ascensions. And this is a 5-star character. So at C0, frankly, right now, based on this information, if this is really how this character is going to play out, being so narrow, cryo support, 80 cost burst, low damage on her skills, both her E and her Q, very minor support as well. And the big meat of this character is locked to that nice damage bonus, but it only lasts for 7 to 5 hits. Hopefully these constellations, though, can really break this character. Because what other, sort of gacha game would break their characters by making you spend more money for constellations out there? I don't know of any of those. Do you? Now, of the first 3, the C1 here, Clarity of Heart, is going to allow you 1 additional charge on Spring Spirit Summoning, bringing it from 5 to 7 charges up to 6 to 8. Now, C2 here is a little bit spicy, I'm not gonna lie. So her elemental burst lasts 6 seconds longer. That's nice, right? Because it's gonna give you a little bit of damage bonus up, resistance down to enemies. We talked about that before. Wasn't crazy on its own. With this constellation, active characters within that AoE from your elemental burst have 15% increased cryo crit damage. So we're gonna add a little bit of crit damage to you, add a little bit more cryo damage from the Ascension, resist down, a little bit more support there, and it's probably one of the cooler of these constellations. Now, C3, obviously, you're going to level up Spring Spirits Summoning by 3 levels. Now, the final 3, starting with Insight here, is a little bit more spicy. So if you have that Icy Quill buff from her elemental skill, you trigger that bonus damage based on Shenhe's attack. Shenhe's going to get a Skyfrost mantra stack. So this will be a brand new thing. What's a Skyfrost mantra? Well, it's going to be buffing up the E damage of your next use of Spring Spirit Summoning. So let's talk about this. When you use Spring Spirit Summoning, you're going to consume all of your Skyfrost mantra stacks. Each stack you consume is going to increase the damage of that summoning by 5%. Here's the joke. You can stack up to 50 of these stacks. Now, we've already talked about your maximum stacks at base level is 7 on a hold. Now it's 8 because you have C1. The stacks last for 60 seconds. How in the world are you going to hit 50 stacks before you recast your elemental skill? Again, doesn't make any sense. You have 10 to 15 second cooldown. Well, check it out. We've done it again. Ladies and gentlemen, C6, Mystical Abandon. Icy Quills no longer use stacks. No longer are you bound to 5 to 7 uses on Icy Quill. If you have C6, you apply it, you have that buff forever, all for Ascension buffs, all that additional damage from Shenhe doing damage. No longer is it locked to 5 to 7 instances of that bonus damage. You have infinite amount of bonus damage as long as you have access to it on cooldown. So you activate it, you're doing all of the damage into the world, you're gonna get 50 stacks, the next use of your E is gonna do a lot more damage than before, and you're always gonna have that big bonus damage. Infinite stacks, infinite cooldown, ready to rock and roll. Because yes, if you remember right, the press cooldown is 10 seconds, the press duration is also 10. Same with the hold, 15-second duration, 15-second cooldown. The only thing that was limiting you was the amount of stacks you could use, 5 to 7. Now it's infinite, and once again, we've managed to make a very powerful character, because the whole reason that this character can do a whole lot, the reason you're pulling for this character outside of aesthetics, obviously you could guys have your favorites out there, well, because of that buff, the additional damage proc is very strong, and it's very limiting at C0, but at C6, well, once again, we have a magnificently powerful character out there.